We're here with Dr. Roland Phillips, an advanced holistic healthcare practitioner of mind, body, and nutrition. He's got degrees in both biology and psychology, in addition to his doctorate in chiropractic. He is an accomplished all-American triathlete with 26 years of racing experience. He's currently an elite master and instructor of bioenergetic synchronization technology. Dr. Phillips is a conduit of increased health and healing to hundreds of thousands through his clinic in Chandler, Arizona since 1983. Thank you, Dr. Phillips, for being with us here today.
Good morning. Thanks for having me. What I'd like to do before we even get into my background is I'd like to ask you some basic questions. As you're sitting there, ask yourself, am I stiffer, more sore, more achy, more restless, have more fatigue today when I wake up in the morning or during the day than 5 years ago, 10 years ago, when I was in my 20s or 30s? My next question is, do you have repeated symptoms in your life? Is there repeated back pain, digestive problems, hormones, reproductive problems, blood sugar regulation? Are you just finding that it's getting harder and harder to get out of bed in the morning and you need something to whip the tired horse? So you're dependent upon sugar products or coffee or cigarettes. Could be therapeutic and recreational drugs. Well, if you answered yes to any of the questions, or you know a family member or a loved one or a business associate, this is the right place to be. So I went to chiropractic school and I learned what I learned. And when I was out in practice, in the early 80s, we're seeing typically musculoskeletal types of things, backs, knees, digestive problems, disc problems. And then we started to see more chronic problems come into the office, fibromyalgia, depression, lots of mood types of problems, anxiety, blood sugar regulation problems, hormones. And I realized that I didn't have the tools to handle what was coming in my door. So I went out and I took other courses. And I happened upon a doctor. His name is Dr. M.T. Morter, Jr., and he was teaching a mind-body nutrition procedure called bioenergetic synchronization technique. And when I found Dr. Morter, I realized I was home. I finally had a procedure, an actual procedure to help people heal, to deal with what was going on. And I had a nutritional approach that was based upon sound scientific data on how the body was actually designed to work. And it's all based on alkalinity. That's what we're going to be talking about today. Now, I'd like to go into alkalization. Before we go into talking about why we've got what we've got, there's some basic premises that we need to cover when it has to do with alkalization. The first basic premise we want to talk about is that the body wasn't created to be sick or to be well, but to survive. And I know that sounds trite, and it's a basic premise. But when you look around today, we're a very sick nation. We're 33rd in the world when it comes to mortality and health. So there's 32 places in the world that you can actually live a more higher quality of life and a higher quantity of life than in the United States of America. Yet we have more medical doctors, we have more pharmaceuticals, we have more drugs, we have more clinicians in hospitals than any place in the world. Yet we're, when it comes to modern civilization and modern societies, first world countries, we're 33rd in the world. So there's something wrong with the basic premises on how we look at our bodies, how we look at health, disease, pain, and so on. So this basic premise that the body wasn't created to be sick or well, but to survive is something we want to start with. And what's happening is that there's three basic categories that get our bodies stuck in a survival response. And when our bodies and minds get stuck in the survival response, we continue to do survival physiology, defense physiology, causing our bodies to go into exhaustion. We go into vitamin, mineral, enzymes, and trace element exhaustion. And the three causes of physical trauma, toxins that we're being exposed to in our thinking. All of diseases of modern man basically are a function of and a reaction to exhaustion. I was listening to a German medical doctor, Dr. Leonard Caldwell, who's treated over 35,000 cases of cancer and has a 92% success rate. And he said the number one cause of cancer that he's found in 35,000 cases was unresolved emotional stress. And then the next factor was toxicity. So when our bodies get stuck in a survival response due to maybe physical trauma locked in memory, the chemicals that we're being exposed to, what we're doing with therapeutic and recreational drugs or our diet, industrial pollutants, and or toxic thinking, the body is going to get stuck in a survival response, and it's doing this survival response over and over again. It's like beating and whipping a tired horse, and there's going to be exhaustion. Or it's almost like putting your foot on the gas and then putting your foot on the brakes at the same time. We're going to have breakdown. So that's what we have in society right now. And to just give you a little background on what's going on in our society is that heart disease is the number one killer of Americans. It's both now male and female. And cancer is number 2. We have autoimmune diseases like Alzheimer's or MS, Sjogren's disease. We have type 2 diabetes that's becoming epidemic in society. Obesity is we're now the most obese society in the world. We have fibromyalgia, high blood pressure, all the symptoms that have to do with inflammation. So it could be colitis, nephritis, tonsillitis, sinusitis, gastritis, arthritis, tendinitis. These are the chronic immune and inflammatory responses known in modern man. There's over 60 of them. So this is what we've got going on because we're stuck in a survival response. The next premise that we want to talk about is that we live and we die at the cellular level, and that all of our choices in what we call the 6 essential choices of life, what I eat, what I drink, breathe, rest, exercise, and think, all of these choices affect the cells at the cell wall, the cell receptor sites, which is the lock and key right on the cell. And according to Dr. Bruce Lipton, who's an expert in epigenetics, Dr. Bruce Lipton tells us that we are not, and I repeat, we are not victims of our DNA, or our DNA does not define our destiny. It's our choices. That the DNA is not the brains of the cell, it's the reproductive center of the cell, and it's the cell wall that is the brains of the cell. And the reason why this is important to you is that when you change your choices, especially when you choose to alkalize your thoughts and alkalize your diet, you're immediately affecting the cell wall and the receptor sites, which sends a signal to what's called messenger RNA, which triggers the DNA to give you a totally different response. So to recap, that we live and die at the cellular level, you are not a victim of your DNA. Your DNA is not your destiny. Your destiny is your choice. And one of the greatest things that you can do for your body and for your mind is to alkalize your diet.